All right, everybody. We are live. We are live. Very excited. Haven't had a live stream in, I don't know, like 10 days or 14 days or somewhere in between there. So tonight, though, we're going to be talking about fantasy football, specifically running backs for the 2024 slash 2025 season. Some of the picks, some of the sleepers, some of the teams or players to avoid, all of that kind of good stuff is what I'll be working on or talking about tonight. So I've done quite a bit of research. So this will be the first installment of the fantasy football position um, um, picks, if you will, for this year. So while we get the show going, let's talk about last year real quick and where the running backs ended up ranking and all of that kind of good stuff. So let's go from there. Hi, Footballer Nick is here. Wow, Footballer Nick, are you at camp, Footballer Nick? I didn't know if you started yet. Hey, Christina's here, and that's great. Didn't know, Footballer Nick, if you were at camp. I know Nathaniel was, so I thought you said you were going to be away for a while. I'm not sure if it was camp or not, but while we're getting people on, oh no, you're not. Okay, great. Well, good to have you on board. I enjoy it. All right, we're going to be talking about running backs tonight, and I want to start with how the running backs finished up in different categories last year, and then we can talk about my recommendations or my thoughts for the 2024 and fantasy football picks, if you will. In yards for running backs last year, Christian McCaffrey of the 49ers led all running backs in the NFL with 1,459. Derrick Henry with Tennessee was second with 1,167. Kyren Williams with the Rams had 1,144. James Cook with the Bills, 1,122. And DeAndre Swift, who is now with Chicago, but probably won't be the featured back there. He'll probably be, he probably won't get the bulk of the carries. He had 1,049 yards last year. So let's go on to a couple more categories on how they finished last year. Zoe's here. Hi, Zoe. How are you? Good to have you on board. Receiving yards, which is such an important secondary mark for running backs, because obviously they can catch the ball. You can get points for them catching the ball and for them scoring a touchdown when they catch it. Receiving yards by running backs last year, number one was Breece Hall of the Jets with 591, a pretty good number there for a running back. Second, of course, was Christian McCaffrey with San Francisco. He was just one of the leaders in almost every category. He had 564 yards. Then Rachaad White with Tampa Bay had 549. Still very good numbers there for receiving yards. Bijan Robinson with Atlanta, who I'll get into a little bit later. I think he's going to have a really good season. Now, he might not put up Christian McCaffrey numbers per se, but I think he's going to have a really good season, and he's worth, a first well, he's worth a first round pick. There's no doubt about it in my mind. He's not a first round pick like Christian McCaffrey, like a number one first round pick, but he's probably in the top five. He had 487 reception yards, and then Travis Etienne with Jacksonville had 476. We'll just go on to total touchdowns by a running back. McCaffrey led everyone with 21 touchdowns, but Raheem Mostert with Miami had 21, although my notes on him say that the numbers will probably dip because of Devin Achane getting more touches this year. So I wouldn't look for Raheem Mostert to put up 21 touchdowns this coming year. Then number 3 was Kyren Williams with the Rams with 15, Gus Edwards and David Montgomery with 13 each. And Gus Edwards is with Baltimore. He's probably going to share a lot of the touches with J.K. Dobbins. And David Montgomery with Detroit won't get all the short yardage carries. That'll be given to another running back with Detroit by the name of Jahmyr Gibbs. And I'll be talking about him in a little bit as well. So let's go on to sort of my picks, not sort of, I don't know why I say that, but let's go into my picks for top running backs. Let's just go through my pick of the top 10, top 10 running backs for your fantasy team. Gus and JK are on the Chargers. Yes, that's right. You're a Charger fan. They are, I think they'll put up some good numbers. I think that they definitely will. So, but let's go through my running backs, I guess, to make it a little more dramatic. I'll start at number 10. Number 10, I have Rachaad White. Last year, he had 990 rushing yards, 549 receiving yards. He had 9 total touchdowns, 6 running, 3 receiving. So he's my number 10 pick at running back. My number 9 pick at running back is Derrick Henry. He had no receiving touchdowns and only had 214 yards receiving, but he had 1,167 rushing yards and he had 12 rushing touchdowns. So he is a very solid pick. He's not going to give you those receiving touchdowns. He's not going to give you a lot of receiving yards, but he's going to give you, probably 1,000 yards rushing and probably 10 plus yards or 10 plus touchdowns. And then let's see, he's a sleeper. Okay. My number 8 was the Travis Etienne with the Jags. He had 1,000 yards or 1,008 yards rushing last year and 476 receiving. He had 12 total touchdowns, just like Derrick Henry, but he had 11 rushing and 1 receiving. He's my number 8 running back. Okay. Let's go to number 7. Andrew Spears' favorite YouTuber, CMC. Yes, Christian McCaffrey. We'll be getting to Christian McCaffrey in just a second. Andrew, thanks for being on the stream tonight. I really appreciate that. But we're working backwards. We're going 10-1. Number 7 is Kyren Williams with the Rams. I had talked to him. He had put up some good numbers last year. He had 1,144 yards rushing, only 206 receiving. However, he had 11 rushing touchdowns and 2 receiving. So he will probably get you some receiving touchdowns, always kind of a bonus for a running back. Some of his time in short yardage situations might be given to Blake Corum with the Rams. So we'll see on that. But he's my number 7 pick. Number 6, I talked about him just a minute or two ago, is Jahmyr Gibbs with the Lions. He may lose some carries to David Montgomery near the goal line, but last year he put up 11 touchdowns, 10 rushing, 11 receiving. He put up 945 yards rushing and 316 receiving. So pretty good numbers there. Not off the charts with his receiving touchdowns, but whenever you can put up 11 touchdowns across the board, pretty good. So we're going into my top 5. Number 5 from the Texans, Joe Mixon had 1,034 yards rushing and 376 yards receiving. He had 12 touchdowns, 9 receiving and 9 rushing and 3 receiving. So he gives you a good balance there. Like I said, he had over 1,000 yards rushing and 376 yards receiving. So he's going to put up a pretty good number. He's still a very, very, very young running back. And as the Texans get better, I think his numbers go up. So I think at number 5, he's a real solid bet. Now with the Jets, I have Breece Hall. He's a name I talked about earlier. He had 591 yards receiving, 994 yards rushing. So he theoretically, this coming year, could put up 1,000 yards rushing, which isn't quite the deal that it used to be because they play 17 games now, going on 18 soon. And he had 591 yards receiving. So he'll be close to 600 yards that way. But he put up 9 touchdowns. He had 5 rushing and 4 receiving. So a good balance there. He puts up big numbers across the board. So I would really see him as, you know what? I take that back. He is not my number 4. I'm out of order now. Joe Mixon was number 5, but Breece Hall is actually my number 2. I see that I changed some of the numbers on the side, so I apologize. But Breece Hall really has some big numbers, and he's pretty balanced when it comes to rushing yards and receiving yards. So that's why I put him as low as number 2. So let's get back to number 4. Number 4 with the Eagles is Saquon Barkley. He had 962 yards rushing, 280 yards receiving. So as I just talked about, Breece Hall not as balanced as passing and receiving. Ron Sampson is here. I don't know which Sampson. I don't know if it's the Ron Sampson. I don't know if it's Nathaniel or Gabriel, but glad to have you on board, whoever you might be, one of the Sampson folks. Oh, it's Gabriel. Hey, Gabriel, good to have you on board. Glad to have you here. How's Sleepaway Camp going, buddy? And are you at the same camp as your brother Nathaniel? And how's it going for him? Okay, so let us know in the chat. And while you're doing that, I will say Saquon Barkley had, like I said, 962 yards rushing, 280 yards receiving. He had a pretty good balance with touchdowns. He had 10 total. Hey, it's Do You Know Ball. Hey, guys, how's it going? Glad to have you on board. We're just doing sort of fantasy football running back picks. So if you have any ideas on that, let me know. Glad to have you on board, guys. If you're watching the show right now, I want you all to turn your attention to Do You Know Ball. It's a great show. They talk a lot of baseball, but they talk all kinds of sports. So I definitely want you to check them out, subscribe to them, like their channel, like their videos, all of that kind of good stuff. So would love to have you guys watch them as well. It's a great show with the folks over there, Zach and folks. So, and Do You Know Ball, why don't you put in the chat what your handle is so the people can go to your channel and like it, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. All right. Ron Sampson, who's Gabriel, says, my brother's at Sleepaway Camp. I'm alone. Nathaniel has no phone. Oh, wow. So he's not going to join us for 3 weeks then. He's got another, 2 weeks or so. So that's pretty interesting. All right. Well, I hope he's having a good time. Should be good. So Saquon Bolden was my number 4 pick, although I cheated and gave you Breece Hall, who was my number 2 pick because I was out of order on my notes here, because I write down all my notes and I did a really bad, well, you can't see it because I have that on, but Saquon Barkley, I don't know why I keep saying Bolden. He had 10 touchdowns, 6 rushing, 4 receiving. Now let's get into the top 3. We already know 2 is Breece Hall with the Jets. I think he has a really, really good numbers, and they're only going to get better if Aaron Rodgers is healthy this year. My number 3 is Bijan Robinson. I've talked a little bit about him earlier. I've also talked about him weeks ago when Footballer Nick, who may or may not still be on the line, told me his rookie card was worth $150 or whatever. I think he was pulling my leg, but that's when I pulled his rookie card from that pack that I got. But Bijan Robinson with the Falcons, he had 976 yards rushing, 487 receiving. He had a total of 8 touchdowns, 4 rushing, 4 receiving. Thank you, Gabriel. Yeah, we're enjoying the show. We're going to be talking on some of the show's fantasy. We're going to be talking some of the sports. We're definitely going to be talking baseball as well. I'm going to try to get the guys from Do You Know Ball on. I think I'm going to be on their show, so we're going to be getting back to normal with some of that sharing and helping each other out and being on each other's shows, which I'm really looking forward to. But Bijan Robinson, with the quarterback situation, what is it, Kirk Cousins over there, I think his numbers probably will go up. They finally have a quarterback. I think that's good. He had 976 and 487. You could really look at 1,000 and 500. He may be quite easily, him and Breece Hall could be an interchangeable like 2A and 2B even this year, because their numbers were similar last year. And I think they both are probably going to be upgraded better quarterbacks this year, so their numbers should go up. So either one of them are a solid pick probably in the first round. And then number one, no surprise here, everyone. I think you've guessed it. Andrew Spears, if he's still on or not, he was talking about it. I'm sure you all did. Football or Nick talk about it? No, he talked about the other Chargers. Number one running back is Christian McCaffrey with the 49ers. He put up 1459 in rushing. He had 564 receiving. He had a total of 21 touchdowns, 14 rushing, 7 receiving. He's essentially, as you guys might predict in fantasy football, the number one pick overall. And I think it's a solid pick. Again, the one thing you always have to worry about is, injuries. But if someone has the first pick overall in your fantasy, they're picking Christian McCaffrey. There's just no doubt about that. So, all right, let's move on here. We're just rolling through, and a couple other, I'm just going to kind of go through a couple other names. Josh Jacobs with the Packers. He's a sleeper, at least I think, he had no receiving touchdowns. He had 805 and 296. So 805 rushing, 296 receiving. He had 6 rushing touchdowns. He's left the Las Vegas Raiders. He's with the Packers. And I think because of the offensive situation, the quarterback situation, which is better with the Packers, the more talent with the Packers, I think he's probably going to put up, or he should put up, better numbers. 805, 296, maybe you get 900, 350, somewhere around there. And maybe rather than just 6 touchdowns, maybe he's, between that 7 to 10 marker for touchdowns. So I think he could put up some big numbers. Someone I had mentioned earlier with the Dolphins, Devon Achane, he was 800, 197. He had 11 touchdowns, 8 rushing, 3 receiving. He will get a lot of work. He's going to get a lot of work with the Dolphins. So I expect his numbers to be even better next year. Maybe not like double, maybe not even 15 touchdowns, but maybe around 10 rushing and 5 receiving, in that ballpark, give or take 1 or 2. Players to watch for the Las Vegas Raiders, or a player to watch for the Las Vegas Raiders, is Zamir White. Because I had mentioned Josh Jackson left, Zamir is going to get a lot of the touches there. And last year, he only had 1 touchdown. He was 451 rushing, 98 receiving. But those numbers should go up with Josh Jackson, considering Josh Jackson had 805, 296 last year. And if Zamir White gets more touches with the Raiders, his numbers, that 451 could almost double, and the 98 might even triple, compared to what Josh Jackson gets. So look for those numbers to go up as well. Another person to watch is Kendre Miller with the Saints. He didn't have much in receiving last year, but he will see a lot in rushing. So that's Kendre Miller. I think he's going to have more rushing yards this year, and maybe not receiving as much. He was only 156 and 117. He's maybe a deep sleeper, if there is such a thing. Someone you really have to look at, maybe no one you draft on draft day, but someone you look at throughout the season and see what his numbers are like, and the number of touches and touchdowns and things like that he gets. Rookies that could be an impact: Trey Benson with the Cardinals, Tyron Tracy with the Giants. Now, a lot of times I don't recommend getting a rookie in football, especially a quarterback. But when it comes to the running back position, they're usually a pretty safe bet. It looks like Trey Benson with the Cardinals will get a bulk of the load carry, if you will, for rushing. So it would be a good bet. You'll have to keep up with the depth charts there, but he looks to be one of the top players in the depth charts with the Cardinals, and would get the workload. And Tyron Tracy, because James Conner gets injured a lot, he'll probably get a big workload with the Giants. As I said when we talked about fantasy a couple of weeks ago, I would try to avoid some of the Cowboys running backs. Ezekiel Ezekiel Elliott is back with the Cowboys, but he only puts up about 500 yards, 600 yards rushing now. He's not quite the featured back. It's going to be a running back by committee. And I know someone had a question the last time I brought that up, but that means they're going to have probably 3 guys that they interchange and that get the same sort of number of touches every game. So it's going to be really difficult to get one player who's head and shoulders above another one. Okay, Footballer Nick says James Conner is good, but they have no line. Yes, that is correct. The Giants really do struggle with that. So we'll injuries when you don't have a front line in front of you. Injuries do become a factor because you get tackled early on, and a lot of that load kind of tackle from the other line. Another player to watch with the Vikings is Aaron Jones. He only had 3 touchdowns last year, 656 yards rushing, 233 receiving. He's just a solid back. He's one to watch. I'm not going to say that he's going to be gangbusters, but he's a player that could have a kind of a breakout type season. Another player to watch is Austin Eckler with the Commanders. He's small and he wears down a little bit, but he does get solid receiving yards. He had 628 rushing yards, 436 receiving yards. And like I said, 6 touchdowns, 5 rushing, 1 receiving. So let me just pause here for a moment. Please, if you're watching this, hit that like button. Would love to have you check out more and put a like behind here. And if you're not, please hit that subscribe button. We do have a contest in the month of July, just like we did in all the other months. And this is our first show for July. And I know it's the 11th, but I haven't been online for a while. Haven't been live rather. But we have a contest, and Footballer Nick tied with Nathaniel last month, and I need to get Footballer Nick. I need to send him out his cards that he won. I still haven't done that, Footballer Nick. I promise I will do that. I apologize for my delay. I've had 18,000 things at once. I was working on an air conditioner over the weekend. It was just been a lot of crazy things. But I will do that. So basically, if you're watching this, we have a contest that thanks, Footballer Nick, for being understanding. For the most participation, so if every time you watch and you put something in the chat, I mark you down in the book, and whoever has the most points, we'll say top 2 people for the month of July will win prizes. So that will be good. All right, let's get back to the running backs. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button. We'll talk about James Cook with the Bills. His role has really been scaled back. I don't know if I would take much of a chance on him, maybe a later round. He did have 11-22 and 445 with 6 total touchdowns last season. I think 2 rushing, 4 receiving. But his role will be scaled back. So he's one to watch to see if that scale back will continue. And one last person to consider is Nick Chubb with the Browns. He put up some good numbers in 2022. He had a horrible knee injury. In 2022, he had 1525 yards rushing. He had 239 receiving. He had 13 total touchdowns. He suffered last year a horrible knee injury. He should be coming back. He's one to watch because he did have some big numbers before, and those numbers might come back. But I don't know if I would draft him as much as I would just sort of watch him, or maybe late in, a late round. If you need a running back, maybe you draft him and hope that he turns things around and puts up those numbers from 2022. But I wouldn't use something in the first 2 or 3 rounds at least to pick him, unless running backs are going like crazy. So, all right. One last thing to talk about running backs before I close out the show. Now, I got to tell you, we've been doing a lot of trivia shows. We've been doing a lot of shows that have interaction between myself and the chat. This one hasn't done that. And so there's a part of me that, it's sort of like it's sort of like I'm talking to no one. I'm not getting any feedback. So I think if I do this next time, I'm going to do something. I'm going to try to think of how I can do this a little bit more interactive. Footballer Nick wants to know when the draft is. The draft will probably be, I'm guessing, in 2 weeks. So it'll be probably the last month of July, maybe early August. I got to make sure Nathaniel's back in. So, and if, do you know ball? I'm sure you guys aren't still around, but if you're there, we're having a fantasy. We're having a sideline fans fantasy. Gabriel, you're invited as well. We're having a fantasy league for sideline fans, and we'd love for you guys to join. Footballer Nick, Nathaniel, myself. I think Nuke, but I haven't seen him in a couple shows. Of course, I haven't been regular. Okay, when you're coming back, when are you coming back from your vacation? Do you want to just go in August, like that first week in August, Footballer Nick? Would that make the most sense? You'd let me know, because I think early August will be fine. Maybe you could be on my birthday. Okay, I don't know when your birthday is. So you'll have to let me know when that is. So, okay, we'll wait in the chat. But while we're waiting for Footballer Nick to let me know sort of a good week or good day to do the draft, I just wanted to let you know I had checked out one of ESPN's fantasy experts listed what their fantasy picks were, their league's fantasy picks were. So August 3rd, yeah, we could do something right around then. Yeah, I'll have to double check if August 3rd works for everybody and for myself. But yeah, probably right around there. If not on your birthday, right around there. So that would be perfect, Footballer Nick. Great. Yep, that's your birthday. Awesome. You'll probably have to remind me, but I'll mark it down here. August 3rd, B-Day. All right. Now, ESPN, one of ESPN's experts, oh, you have Yahoo. Okay, do you want to do it on ESPN or Yahoo? It doesn't really matter to me. I've done, I think, both. I've done a lot of Yahoo, so I'm probably more familiar with that. But all right. So ESPN and their league, one of their leagues, I'm sure they have many. This is the order that they picked the top 15 draft picks of running backs, that is. The top 15 running backs picked in this order were Christian McCaffrey, number 1, Bijan Robinson, number 2, Breece Hall, number 3. So I had those two guys the other way. I would say Breece Hall's 2, Bijan Robinson's 3, but it doesn't really matter. I think they're going to put up very similar numbers. Number 4, they had Jonathan Taylor. My comment on that from Indianapolis, Jonathan Taylor at Indianapolis has an inexperienced quarterback. I think it's too early maybe to pick him as the 4th best running back, but that's not to say that it's not a good pick. I would maybe wait a little bit. I would maybe consider him closer to 10 as a pick based on the quarterback. Their 5th running back was Saquon Barkley. Then they had Jahmyr Gibbs. At number 7, they had Kyren Williams with the Rams. And then number 8, they had Isaiah Pacheco with the Chiefs. Now, I know that a lot of people are bullish on the Chiefs. I'm bullish on the Chiefs. Mahomes, I think, is going to put up better numbers this year than he had last year. But this might be a little high for Isaiah Pacheco. He might be more of an early teens, tweens, that 11 to 15 kind of spot. He was picked 8th here, so it might be a little early. Number 9, they had Travis Etienne, or Etienne, which I think is fine. They had number 10, Derrick Henry with Baltimore. I think that was good. Now they had all the way at number 11, they had Joe Mixon. Now remember, I had Joe Mixon at my number 5. They picked him as the 11th best running back. So if you can find a steal like that, where you can get like a Joe Mixon at higher, I always forget how that goes, if you can get a deal on him, essentially, if you can pick him at 11 for running backs, that is. Now, when I say these numbers, this isn't their draft. This is how they drafted the running backs, the top 15 running backs from their draft. So he might have been, number 20 for all I know. But here I have him the 11th running back picked. I have Joe Mixon with Houston as a number 5 running back. Okay, and then they had James Cook with Miami. They had then at number 13, Devon Achane. Then at 14, they had Rachaad White, which I think is a good pick. And then at number 15, they had Alvin Kamara, which I thought was maybe a little too early. Only because I don't think he's going to put up the numbers that he used to put up. So I think that might hurt him. He hasn't really had a huge season since 2020 when he put up 21 touchdowns. So Alvin Kamara and the pick at number 15 that I saw from the ESPN folks, probably what happened, my guess is somebody had Alvin over the years or had him back in 2020 and thought maybe it was a steal, or maybe they have an emotional attachment. A lot of times when it comes to fantasy, you can kind of prey on people like this. You can make trades with them if they like certain players, but they have a natural attraction or affinity for one player over another because they've done well with that player. Well, this player hasn't done gangbusters since 2020, but he was picked as the 15th overall running back in that ESPN draft. Kenneth Walker with Seattle and DeAndre Swift with the Bears probably would have been better picks. I think those were the next picks in the draft. I could be wrong about that. They might have just been players I recommended over Alvin Kamara with New Orleans. Anyway, that is the show for tonight. Thank you all for joining. Sorry about not having any live streams for quite a while. Footballer Nick, I'll get those cards out to you. I'm trying to think. We will have a show Sunday. We'll go back to the Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. I'm not sure on what the topics will be on Sunday, but I know it'll be interactive because I do like when you guys are giving me feedback, answering questions, and all that kind of good stuff. So we'll be going there, and it'll start at 9 p.m. Eastern. So I will see you all on Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for watching tonight, everybody. I really appreciate it. Take care. Have a great weekend.